So, hello. We are here for another wonderful episode. We have a guest today that I followed on Twitter, and Sarah and I both thought, he's got some great stuff out there with his blog and some podcasts of his own. So, I'd like to introduce Adam Anthony, and with the Onward and Upward is his brand. He can talk about that. Welcome.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Sarah, Louise, thank you so much. It's a great time to be here with you guys.
Very excited.
Yeah, so thank you for introducing my Onward and Upward. Sometimes I forget that that's the brand that I created. And it's like sometimes you just get so involved with the work and just trying to move forward, onward and upward. And then somebody reminds you, hey, this is you. Like, this is what you've done. This is the platform that you're building. So I appreciate you guys keeping that alive for me.
Of course.
Well,
Happy
thank you.
to.
It's good stuff too. And everybody should follow him on Twitter because you have a lot of stuff going on Twitter. You're like my favorite person to look at.
Thank you. Twitter is a lot.
It is.
I definitely look at it differently now as an adult
Yes.
than when I was a kid. I don't know what I was talking about back then, but now it's like some more substance.
Yeah, it's big. Well, tell us your adoption story. Start
Yeah.
from the beginning and let us know.
Like, where are you from? Where did this all, what's your Genesis story?
And it's really interesting that you're talking about the beginning of this because there's a writing community group that I recently joined where that's like what we're talking about, the beginnings. And I didn't realize how much that's changed for me because for me, I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I've always known that I was adopted, right? My adopted mother, she adopted me. She was a single parent, and she's always been truthful, communicating to me, I was adopted. Now, I didn't really conceptualize that or understand that as a kid until like years later and started to notice different things. But
Were you a transracial adoptee?
No, I'm actually a same race adoptee. Yes, so I'm a same race adoptee. My adopted mother and my adopted father are both African American Black, and we together kind of made a family unit, I would say. And then I have a adoptive sister that's younger than me, that is their biological child that we just sport together over the years, kind of became a family together. And so yeah, I was born in Knoxville, and being told that I was adopted, it didn't, like I said, it didn't really mean much like in the beginning until when I got probably like teenage years. I had like a lot of angst and a lot of questions and a lot of anger. And then I just started to like, well, if I'm here and this is my family that I have, where's the other family? Like, what does that even mean? Like, you're saying that I'm not actually your child in the sense that I'm supposed to be your child. And that was, I never really processed it. I didn't really understand what that meant. And also there wasn't anyone else who I knew that was in my position as an adopted, kid that I could even talk to. So,
did you tell people you were adopted when you were young? Like, did friends or did you?
Well, I tried this thing. I tried to like test it out with people, like some of my childhood friends. I tried to like tell them like, hey, so I'm adopted. What do you think about that? And they're like, huh? I mean,
I
your
didn't
mom
really
is your mom,
understand
your
what that
dad is your dad. Yeah, no, they didn't really understand. And I'm just like, you're not giving me what I need in this conversation. But of course you can't because you're not adopted. But all I ever knew as a kid was that my biological mother, which I'm sure a lot of adoptees can understand and relate to this, was a teenager that was not in a position to be raising anybody's child. And, the forces that were at the time, led her to do that. And she didn't look back. And that was all I knew. She was, a teenager and she was single, and her mother, would be able to say, we're not doing this. We can't afford to do this. So this is not the life that we can move forward with. And then my adopted mother found out about me when I was in Knoxville, and she adopted me. So
how did how did she find out? And were you an infant?
Yeah. So I really feel, I have to say, I really feel blessed that I have my adoption records at this stage of life, because it was just stories that were said. It was just kind of like anecdotal references that I really couldn't connect the dots to, but now I can. And so my adopted mother at the time, was told by my social worker that was over my case, about my situation. And I was in foster care for a brief period of time. Like, I was an infant still. So I couldn't really recall anything. But she was told about the situation, and they were like, I guess, acquaintances at the time. And so then my adopted mother, she was a single, hardworking professional, Christian woman. She wasn't really looking to get married or have kids, or any of that. She was just being a boss, doing her life. And, the social worker told her about me and how I really needed to be placed in a situation that was stable, and how um, it was pretty serious, and it was like an emergency. So it's like, if she did not adopt me, that heightened that instant, hey, we got to step in here. That's kind of what that energy was, I think. And my mom, was available, and she, was like very connected to, when meeting me, knowing that she was going to adopt me, and that we were going to have a family together, and that we were going to be together.
And what were you? I'm assuming that if you weren't adopted, you would have gotten into the foster care system. It would have been ugly. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
all of
what
this.
year was this?
So I was born in 1994,
Wait,
and so this 1994. So this is all in the span of 1994. Like, this was very quick, even though when I look back at like adoption records, it seems like it took a long time. In retrospect, it feels like it was very quick, because this all happened before I probably turned one, in the matter of me being born, me being in foster care for a brief period, and then my adopted mother adopting me. So, which I'm
and
grateful
she
for.
wasn't married at the time.
No, she was a single woman. And like I said, she was told about the situation from an acquaintance, a social worker. And then, her heart and mind opened up to, being able to do this. So, which, if that was not the case, who knows? But I feel like back then, I was still in the foster care system in Knoxville, and unknowingly having family that are actually in the same city, same states, who have no idea, of my existence.
The other family, your extended family as well. Yeah.
Yes, like anyone biologically that I was related to, not knowing that, there's a kid that's, born, and he's in foster care, and he's about to be adopted. Like, just takes you back for a second, when you think about it. And so that's why I'm glad to have this information now, because it just puts a fuller picture as an adoptee's experience for so many things that happen to us from the time that we're born to the time that we're an adult, and being able to like go on this journey.
Now, how long was it just you and your adoptive mom until she got married and had your sister?
About a few years.
And
Yeah,
so then her husband, did he adopt you?
Yes, so my adoptive father. Yes, that's my father. And I always refer to them as my parents, because they're my parents. But yeah, it was us for a few years, and then they got married, and then they had my sister after that, and it just became us four.
And are you still in touch with them, close to them?
Yeah,
on this journey?
we all, we all still live relatively close to each other. I mean, I'm a grown young adult, as I like to say. So, you know, I'm very intentional about trying to keep relationships at a level where we are in each other's orbit. But I think that at this stage, I've realized that they know, and I know, I'm still going on this journey, and still discovering more things, and still learning more truths, and still healing, and still speaking. And that's not going to stop. But that does not mean that my relationship with, them just ends because
No.
Right. Yeah. Of
I
course
didn't
not.
choose to be here and do any of this and live this, but I'm trying to make sense and make peace with what's a very difficult experience, and that has a lot of pain. And they see that, they know that, but I think there's also this like line where it's like I still continue to be me and finding resources like you two and other adoptees that understand, which I've
Mhm.
never had, in almost 30 years of life. And so they see that that's something new. They see that, oh, he's actually connecting, he's actually searching, he's doing things at such a momentous speed that, it can create this like, separation. It can
Yeah.
create this just like, oh, yeah, you're
Naturally.
adopted.
Yeah.
So it has to be intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you found your biological family?
Yes, the big discovery. The big discovery. So yeah, I started that journey in 2018, I'll say. And I remember I was in a very lost space where I just wanted to find some things that made sense for me. I've always been a deep person, and I recently affirmed that about myself. But it's taken years to get to that place because there's always been this longing. And in 2018, I was lost and I was trying to find, for some reason, like I just thought, okay, I battled years and years of whether I want to go and know, or whether I just want to move forward and just forget that I'm adopted and anything that ties with that. And just that year, something in me just kicked and was like, we're going to go full speed ahead and we're going to turn over every single rock. We're going to do everything we can. And I was working with a case manager in Nashville. And, we worked side by side, and me, applying for my records and just starting that search. And then once that took place, I got my records, and then I actually got names of people who I was biologically related to. And it all just kind of started flowing. And then, in case you did not know, I'm like a PI. So if you give me a clue,
You
I'll
and
just find
most
everything.
adoptees. We share
We
that in
have to be.
common.
We
Yes.
have to be. Nobody else is doing it for us. So yeah, once I got that, I felt like the door just opened up, and I was like, wow. So
I want to ask you something. So when in 2018, were you in therapy? Like what do you think triggered that? I mean, you know what I love about your story is just that you're so together on this, like you know what you're doing on this journey for a very young person. And I just think I love that. And I didn't know if you had any help in that with therapy, or you just kind of came to this on your own, or
I'm so glad you said that. And I received that. I appreciate it. But no, I didn't. I didn't have therapy. And I wish that I did when I
Yeah.
started it, because when I started the journey, I was in a pretty raw emotional state.
Mm,
Like I said, I felt lost. And I thought that if I found my biological family at that stage of life when I was questioning so many things about myself, my identity, that would make more sense. Like that would help me be more
yeah.
confident in me, right? And what I realized is I met my father's biological side of the family first. And I just realized that there was so much similarity that I had in meeting like my father, my siblings, extended family. But then, over the span of, I would say, 2 to 3 years to date now, there's a lot of differences. And just the
Mm,
fact of, you have no idea who I am. I've lived X amount of years out of your existence. You've lived X amount of years out of my existence. And we can't cover that gap. We can't do this in a way that just says, okay, because we share blood, because we're connected this way, everything's just all good. The love is there. Sure, love can be there, but also who I am as a person, I worked really hard to get to be who I am. And you either can appreciate that or not. And the same for you. And I think I realized that at some point, I was so raw without having any resource to help me in meeting
mhm.
my biological family that I just was vulnerable. I was
Mm.
so exposed to wanting to connect with people who I'd missed out for all these years. And I just had no sort of safeguard, no sort of like boundary, nothing.
Yeah.
Just was like,
It's such a
here.
it's a tricky thing because your biological family, an adoptee's biological family has had all these years where they have their life and their
Mhm.
dynamics and their relationships. And then we don't fit in really with our adoptive family. And so we're just kind of floaters in the world of, you know, so
Yes,
it's very common and it's very painful
it
to,
is. Because once you realize it, then it's like, oh, so this didn't fix everything. Like you
No,
didn't do
it starts a whole nother thing, right? It's like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's not the
yeah.
ending, it's the beginning of something else.
yeah.
Another thing to heal. And then
Yeah.
when you mentioned Louise having a therapist, I did find a therapist in 2020, and he came like in the middle of that discovery with reuniting with my biological family. And I'm glad he came when he came because he's trained in a lot of trauma centered things, even if it's not adoption specific. He's worked with me and he's been very open to like learning more and doing more, which I'm very grateful for. But because I got to connect with him, that's what really I think saved me from going further into this like abyss of
Yeah.
adoptee longing, vulnerability, and just a chaotic,
Getting your boundaries
experience.
around you a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it helped me kind of like go back and say, wait a minute, we can hit pause on this, like check in,
This is
stop.
good. This is good for listeners to hear. If there's people listening, then they're going to do searching and, knowing it's not, maybe get the help up front to be there for you. And, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I wish
Um,
I had it.
yeah,
so you dove
all of
in,
us.
did you have names? Did your adoption decree provide your birth mother's name? Is that how you
Yeah.
found? I mean, I just
So
wondering, like, we were both baby scoop era, so we didn't have that wasn't on in our adoption decree. We only had non-identifying information. So,
yeah. Um, So I recently learned through Twitter and all of you guys talking about what an OBC is. Um, and now that I know that term, like, because the only birth certificate I actually ever had was my adopted parents. And
Hmm.
so I didn't even realize that wasn't
that's
the real
standard. Yeah.
deal. Yeah, I didn't realize that was the real deal. It's like whenever you go to do something like your job or whatever, it's like, here's a birth certificate. But then when I looked at the records, it did have my biological mother's name on there. But the thing that I learned that was hard to accept and process was my biological father's name was not there. And he wasn't there because he didn't know that I was alive and that he
Oh,
had a son. And so,
he
yeah,
wasn't given that option.
no. And there's something to be said with that whole reality, which I know quite a few people face. And I'm sure they have difficult emotions and thoughts around that, like I have, because I'm like, why? Like, this is a missing piece. This is a man who helped create me. So, where's he at? Why should I have to go search long and hard for him? You know, whatever the circumstances. I'm not saying that they're not wrong circumstances or whatever the reasons are, but I just feel like the adoption records weren't concerned about a baby growing up and wondering what's going on and coming back later and realizing that their story is incomplete and that there's information that's, empty, missing, whatever.
There's so little thought
Um,
for the infant. I mean, honestly, the babies, there's so
yeah,
little thought for going forward. What will this baby want? And that's just
yeah. And I didn't have
still.
that. So I had to like do that PI stuff. I had to ask questions. I had to use 23andMe. That was a huge like window for
Had
me
you met your
because
birth mother at this point?
no, I met her after I've met like my father's side of the family
Mm.
because there was something in me that said, based on what I knew, which I won't really go into all the details of her side yet, but what I will say is since his was a question mark for me, I knew quite a bit about her, but I needed to know more about him. And so I figured it would be, good for me to see what's going on with that side of the family because they have no idea about me. nothing. And the shock of just realizing, that my father has another son when he has other children was just wow. Um, and it helped me understand a lot of important things about myself in meeting him and that side of the family because we're very alike. And I've always just been drawn to, for some reason, having a having a male figure that connects to me in a way that is just so organic that it's like we're each other's. Yeah, that's I could just see it. I could just see it.
I
There's
was wondering that if you had the draw for like a male, you know, because
yeah,
most people do search for their mother first or talk to the mother first. So, it's interesting to hear about that actually. That having that like having a strong draw for that.
yeah. One is just because like it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me why he wasn't in the picture, and so I needed
Mhm.
to see for myself to understand what is going on. And fortunately, which many adoptees probably will experience, as many answers as we may want and get the opportunity, if we can, to meet our biological parents, that does not mean that they're just going to open up the red carpet to give all the answers and details and talk about who they were years and years and years and years ago, which was a painful lesson. But, I now have confirmation that I now know who my people are. I got
Yeah.
to see, who they are. I see people that look just like me. Like, I'm kidding you. Nah, I think you were on that thread, Louise,
Mhm.
where I shared on Twitter with like the families and like, who do you look like? And my
It
great
was
grandfather
I
and
think
I are
I
like,
put something up too
Yeah,
to that.
Sarah
Yeah.
did too. It's
yeah,
like you're
so, yeah,
identical.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
pretty amazing. I just want to say, like, you're very young, and these relationships have a lot of time to evolve and change, and people grow or they get old. I mean,
Mhm.
this isn't the end of the road. It might be this way right now. It doesn't mean it's going to be this way in a year. It can evolve.
I hope so. Because
Yeah, I mean,
I hope so.
sometimes people need a little space. Sometimes, it's a lot for everybody to grapple with. And just, if the door's shut at the moment, it doesn't mean it will be. So just I know it's so painful, and it's good you have somebody, might also consider there's a lot of adoption therapists out there, a lot of adoption groups, healing groups, like you've probably maybe explored all this, but that's also something to think about
Mhm.
too, because so many people have been through this, and it's good to share and have that.
I agree. And I want to have like one actually locally for me that's not just like an online support group.
Yeah.
That's been something
That'd
I've
be
been
nice to
thinking
have
about.
it in person, wouldn't it? I feel
Yeah,
the same way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just to have as a resource whenever, we want to be able to have that space together because, like I said, I didn't realize, like as a kid, how instrumental that would have been when you have all these questions and anger and angst and
Mhm.
confusion and pain. And it doesn't make any sense when you're like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. And then you have to wait almost 20 years
I
or
know.
other
It's also
people,
really
many,
kind
many
of
years.
Yeah.
it's hearing you talk too. Like, so you were adopted in the 90s, and then you became, like, even still in the early 2000s, nobody thought to say, hey,
I know.
adoption is trauma, relinquishment is trauma. We should get ahead of this. Let's get him some therapy. Let's all have therapy together as a family. Like, it's still not happening is pretty
No,
shocking to
no.
me.
Well, and it's like, I think what happens, and I don't know if other adoptees experience this, but I know for me, you try or you believe that you're assimilating so well because you love your family, you love your cousins, your friends, whatever it is, and you just live that day-to-day life as a teenager, as an elementary school student, college
Yeah.
student, whatever. But then you get into these phases where you're like, oh wow, I'm adopted. And this is not fully my life. Like there's something missing here. Like I wonder where my birth mother is. I wonder where my birth father is. Do I have siblings? Do I have a biological grandfather?
Yes.
All these things happen, and then you leave it and then go back to like day to
I
day
always
life.
felt like I had some big secret and I was like hiding it. You know, it was a different era, but I was really I'd think about it and then squash it way down there and then feel guilty for even thinking the thoughts. You know what I mean? If you look
Yeah.
back and think about that, like what Sarah's saying, to have the early, because it is
But I mean,
modern,
more the point
you
I'm
know?
making was more about the fact that the adoptive parents and the social
Yeah.
workers don't say, okay,
Let's get into therapy.
we
Yeah.
know that relinquishment is trauma. We in the early 90s,
We knew
it
this.
was it was out there. Relinquishment is trauma. Why do we not address that with kids when they are little it's just still
Yeah.
because it's still a narrative of how
Mhm.
wonderful adoption is.
It's a narrative.
It's still that public narrative about that.
And I'm glad that you said that too, because for so long, actually no, that's not it. Recently, because I've started everything that I've started, there's just been this like righteous anger that I've had to be able to just want to tell people, you have no idea. You have no idea what you're talking about. Like you don't. Like, and you may think that you know me as one individual who's just grown up, that you may remember I'm adopted, you may not remember I'm adopted, doesn't matter. But you don't really know how hard it is to just put that aside and just
Mhm.
hide that. You don't really have a space. You don't have a safe space to heal and ask questions and just talk. Just
Right.
talk to someone about all the things that you're thinking or experiencing.
Mm.
So you don't have that experience. You don't have to go through that. But I would encourage you to have more grace when you're curious to why any of us would go on the journey that we go on. And why, if we're speaking the truth about things that we don't like or that we're angry about or frustrated about being adopted, you listen just because
Yeah.
you're
It's
used to
very
that.
well said. Yeah. Very well
Listen
said.
to our voices. We have the lived experience. You don't have the lived experience. Don't tell me how I'm supposed to feel or not feel.
No, no,
Listen with
no.
grace is a good way to put
Yeah,
that.
it's so nice.
For everyone. Like, I mean, I think I started to notice that I'm really happy that I'm seeing more adoptee connects, even if we agree, disagree, have shared experiences, don't. I'm glad to see more as an adult. I'm glad to see more people show up because I noticed when I started sharing my story, some people were supportive, a lot of people ignored it, and some people
Yeah.
had a lot to say that was not positive. And so I just kind of took all that in and I'm like, there's adoptees wrong. There's more adoptees now. Like there's more adoptees who are following or I'm connecting with. And eventually that'll build if I keep going with this. It won't be mattering as much to, I mean, yes, we want to kind of infiltrate, the mainstream
Yeah.
and get other people to know. But I feel like the people who I would have said are friends or relatives or whatever trusted people at this stage, it just changes. That's all I'm saying. It just changes the more I lean in to all this.
You see some shifts in relationships for sure. And some distancing and ignoring.
Mhm.
Ignoring is also a reaction, right? So that's always interesting to me, the ignoring part,
Yeah,
because there's no
yeah.
dialogue in that. It's well, I want to hear more about your story too, like how you had siblings from your dad on your dad's side. You said he has other children. Are you close to them at all? Or has that?
No, well, because like the theme that I feel like I learned when meeting them, and even when I eventually met my biological mother side of the family, some of them, I met people. I met people when they were in a place of dysfunction and pain,
Mm, mm,
like without saying all their things and putting out all their business. I just think that that's just what I walked into. I walked into transitional phases that I didn't understand, that had nothing to do with me,
yeah.
really. But because that was going on, it made it difficult to make these relationships that I really wanted to make. Like, I have siblings that, you know, two that are the same age as me. We were all born at the same time, which is wild. But, you know,
That's wild.
yeah, it is. But, you know, we're all so different as far as just like the life that we're living, the lives that we're living. And as adults trying to make relationships versus being kids that you grew up with, you don't have that luxury of saying, okay, well, this is my brother, so, you know, or this is my sister, so let's just, you know, be all together and kumbaya it all. No, like you're an adult, you can do whatever you want to do or don't want to do. And I can do the same thing. So we really have to be intentional. And like Sarah said, as long as we're alive, maybe things will change as we continue to grow and do better for ourselves and just live as we are, hopefully. But it was hard. It was hard to make those relationships because, again, I did not have really an understanding for myself of what are the what are the standards and expectations here for me to make
Mm.
sure that I'm safe and engaging in these relationships, and what is it from you that's going to say, yeah, I'm willing to open up my heart and I'm willing to open up the possibility that we could actually have, you know, this kind of relationship, even though I have XYZ going on in my life. So I'm kind of at the place where it's like, okay, like I see them and I look at them and I'm like, yep, that's my brother, that's my sister. We look alike. That's great. That means everything. And that's kind of like what I take now, you know,
Yeah.
because I still get to have that. That doesn't go away. Nobody can take that away from me. Whether or not they feel the same way, that's up to them. But for me, I guess I'm kind of used to it. I'm used to going in and realizing that there's so little I can control of these
Yeah.
relationships. There's just so little. Like I think Sarah, you said, you know, they go on and build their family unit and their life, and it's like you were never there.
Yeah.
So for you to just come in and then just expect insta family is very, very lofty. That's a very lofty goal, and I take ownership of it. I really do, because I have a huge heart and I love connection. So, but therapy is kind of, you know, slowed that down a little bit and tried to, you know, see what the playing field is, see like what's actually going on, and make sure that I'm not losing myself just for the sake of wanting connections with people, and wanting healthy, like healthy quality connections with people,
Yeah.
because I'm not at this stage of life where I feel like I'm just going to give people access to me just because we're family. Like, and the same back. Like, I want it to be intentional. I want it to be where it's like, okay, you know, you respect what I have going on here, and I can respect what you have going on here, and we can really be intentional about being there
Yeah.
for each other.
Intentional is big. I recently met with my biological cousins I've never met on Zoom just a week ago. And I felt like I was in a place they were saying, "Oh, for so many years we wanted to know you." And I wasn't there, you know, with some things. But it was nice. It was intentional. I said, "I want to be here and I want to get to know you." And I feel Sarah's right about your youth. I mean, you have and you're so mature about it. You have your boundaries. I didn't have those boundaries till I was older. So, you know, you're going to do really well with this. I think long term, just having people come in and grow. Like you said, you know, your siblings they're young too and
Mhm.
going through transitions. In your 40s and 50s, people, you know, change and grow and soften. Makes me cry. But anyway.
Are
Well, I
you
wonder
all
about
are
that.
you local? Is everybody local?
Most, like, as far as like the immediate family units, yeah. But there's a few that are out of state that are further away, so that kind of makes it hard. But it's also like, again, like it's just reality. Like when I walked in, people were doing they were living different lives where I could just see that things were hard, see that things were like stressed, or see that there were just things that, like I said, had nothing to do with it. But
That's a pretty healthy thing though, that you can walk in and see that. A lot of people can't. They'll walk in so overcome with their feelings of what they need to have back that
yeah,
they don't see that. We've heard a lot of those stories. So just even for you to know that, even though it's disappointing, it's kind of, it's not small that you recognize that.
what was hard because I felt like I was like battling both. Like I felt like, like, okay, for example, I found out that I have, a nephew who's like 5 and he's like across the country. Like I've never met him in person, but I I love that kid. And I'm like, okay, one day you're going to grow older and hopefully remember there's some uncle somewhere in the world that you can, reach out to if you want to do that. Even, while that's not a reality now, I try to make sure that I don't lose the hope and the desire for that because that is very important. It's super, super important. Like it's easy to get, which I've been, it's easy for me to get angry and frustrated and sad at relationships not always going the way that I want. But there's also been a lot of joy with relationships that I've gone well. Like I don't know if you follow this or not, but my great grandmother on my biological father's side, she passed away last year.
Mhm.
And me and her were like this. And so, even though we didn't have a lot of time together, she taught me some very important things about just how unconditional like her love was.
Mhm.
Now, she was like 80 something years old, but that doesn't matter because she was just available. And she knew me. She knew me to the point where it's
That's
like,
part of the wisdom of being older, is she knew she didn't have that weird thing with you. She
yeah,
wanted to give you love. Yeah. I
yeah,
saw
she
that.
knew. So it's like she didn't care. She was like, I know this is this, and I know that's that, and you want this and you want that. But it's just so nice to be able to know that that was easy. Like
Mhm.
that was easy for us
That's
to do.
great.
And I I love that time. But I'm also I've always been like a grandma's boy. So, I've loved all my grandmothers. So yeah.
And
Now,
you're yeah.
and what about your mother, your biological mother?
Mhm.
Have you
Mm, you know, uh, it's this tug of war between giving grace to a lot of things that I like in my heart. I have a lot of grace for things that I wasn't there for, things that I don't know, all the above. And then wanting accountability for any pain that I have. And that's it's a tug of war. And so I think that what I've realized in my attempt to connect with her is I felt like I was I felt like I was in a position to have to give more grace than getting any accountability. And it felt unfair to me because it's like if I'm giving you all the grace, that's good. Like that doesn't feel forced. But if I'm not getting any accountability to help me move forward in my life to some degree, um, I just don't see what this relationship really looks like healthily for either one of us. And I think, there's just things I still don't know. There's just things that I still don't know. That's whenever or however, a biological mother would want to share that with her child. Who knows?
did
Who
she
knows?
have children after you?
Yeah, I have a brother that's about, I think like maybe 10 years younger than me or something like that.
He's
Yeah.
young. Yeah.
Yeah, he's young and he's a good kid, but again, a family unit that's been created, a family unit that's been created. And I think that that's again, it's like I'm the foreign plant disrupting the ecosystem where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's something that's been grown, whatever it looks like, however good or bad it is, that's there.
Was it always like that? Like even when you first contacted her, or did it become that? I'm curious. Like at first was she like, oh my goodness, and then it went into it, or was it always kind of this boundary
Well, we're
pushed
kind of
back?
similar. in ways that are really good and ways that are possibly unproductive, where we both observe and we just see like what's going on. You know, we can just suss out people. We can see
Mhm.
where the behavior is, and we're able to just know like if we want to continue or not continue,
Mhm.
which is helpful. But also, I think we both are very spirited people. Like we're very passionate, you know, like full of opinion and attitude kind of people. And I think with us, I wanted things that I felt like had a person would have a larger capacity that was not measuring, that was not congruent to who I was actually seeing.
Mhm.
And that was hard for me to accept that and just still have a relationship because it felt like I wasn't getting something that I wanted.
Yeah.
And so, you know, only through therapy, I kind of was like, okay, well, if I would have gone back and done that, you know, maybe having a smaller capacity, you know, expectation would be helpful. But again, you have to know who you are. You have to know that if that's
Yeah.
what you actually want, if that's what I actually want, there's nothing wrong with wanting that. There's nothing wrong with wanting accountability. There's nothing wrong with wanting, you know, someone to have just as much excitement to
Yeah, the love and
drive
acceptance.
across town and meet me
Yeah.
for lunch or breakfast or something, even if it inconvenienced them, even
Yeah.
if it means that, you know, they're having to work. I'm the child.
Yeah.
I am your child. So it's not supposed to be me. It's not supposed to be me that does the heavy lifting. So, you know,
It's so often
it,
the
yeah,
adoptee who does, by the way, balances the adults.
We're always trying to, juggle and take
mhm,
care of everybody around us. That's very, very common among
yeah,
us.
and it
Um,
sucks.
and it's just,
I mean,
It does suck.
it does. But again, it could evolve. If other parties get their own, start working on themselves and looking in the mirror. I mean, it's that people do that in their own time. Unfortunately, it's not in our time. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely feel like you have a lot more to come. This isn't the end of the road, it's the beginning. Uh, and you're growing as a person and healing, and that's all you can do. Take care of yourself, heal yourself,
yeah,
and the relationships will be what they'll be.
And you're
yeah.
you're in a healthy relationship, right? I don't want to say, oh, talk about your personal life, but you're doing well in your personal relations.
Yeah,
Have
and I don't
support.
know how other adoptees feel about this. I've only talked to a few, but it can be hard to have those partnerships when
Mhm.
you're depending on where you're at in the journey as an adopted person.
Very hard.
Like, whew, um, but I'm
We
very
could take this
blessed.
offline and talk all day about it, by the way.
Please, please, like I think we need to do like a fireside chat on this because
Yeah.
like I feel like I have only recently been able to say that
Mhm.
because I'm available for something different
Yeah.
now. When I was going through all of this, I wasn't available. I was not available for that. I was so zeroed in on just all my thoughts and emotions and all the stuff and trying to just still heal and move forward and be okay with not being okay and just so much stuff. But I'm just like, okay, a relationship. Mm, not really. And even when I tried, I felt like I'm a spiritual person. So, you know, I feel like God was telling me, yeah, you're still not really there. You're
Mhm.
still not really like you're trying. I see your effort, but it's not working. But now in this relationship, with I think the distance of all the things that I experienced with my biological family, I've been able to be available for something new. And
Mhm.
I've been able to put that intentional work and just trying to relax more and trying to be okay with giving some vulnerability, you know, and just saying, okay, look, I'm an adopted person. I know that you know this because my partner knows this, but here's what's going on, you know, just a little bit. Like here's something that I wrote the other day. Would you like to listen? Because it would be helpful for you to know this is me. That helps me, you know that you're here. And then just vice versa, just trying to
Vulnerability
figure out
part is hard. It's really hard to be vulnerable with somebody else and to be like, okay, I have this messed up stuff. Please, you know, hear me.
yes.
Don't leave me. Don't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you all this
Yeah.
ugly stuff that I didn't really tell you about till I figured it out, you know.
Yeah,
It's
because
big.
I also realized that it could be very different. And that's a fear. Like if I have all this stuff and your family or your, you know, perspective of these dynamics looks completely different than mine, does that mean that we're not going to work
Yeah.
because I have all this and you don't have that? And it's and like I was telling myself that, like I was telling myself that that's not going to be a thing, right? But I believe looking at evidence and action is a lot better as a confirmation than just going with whatever's in your head
Yeah.
about what else can go wrong and all this stuff. So
Wow,
Well,
it sounds you're in such a healthy and good place. And you're so young. I mean, you have and it just what a great optimistic path forward. You know, despite all the pain and the stuff that's come with that, you are really like ahead of the game of most people, and really happy to hear that. It's really encouraging for
thank
me
you.
anyway.
It's
Yeah.
happy to be seen in that way. I have to say that because sometimes it's hard to be like, oh,
how am I being seen?
how am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, like, and my therapist every now and then he'll just like, you tell me that you want to know, like, when you're growing or when something's, you know, positive or whatever. This is that moment. I'm like, okay, well, thank you for that because let's just take a moment and be there. Because once I leave, then I go back to whatever I'm doing, and I don't necessarily stay in that space of enlightenment.
Well,
No,
that's
nobody
that's
does.
human. That's a hard, that's human. That's just human.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
only strive, we're never going to be perfect, but we
No,
can always
just stay in
strive.
the golden lights of just like
Yes. Just
we
nothing
strive for
rarely
phases
that.
me.
we rarely do.
Well, this has been so great, and I feel like there's always there's going to be more to your story, and please stay in touch with us and keep us posted. And we're here for you if you ever want to
Yeah.
talk or you just need someone to hear you
I
and
have hope
see
for the
you.
future with you out there. You know what I mean? Like people like you and your age and how you are. I feel the young people are changing it. It's just
Thank you.
it's beautiful. I'm glad that
Thank you so
we've met
much.
and we do want to stay in touch. Well, we will on Twitter, but in touch beyond that.
I would love.
Like I like
This
the
is important.
fireside
Yeah.
the fireside chat. We'll get on.
Yeah, no, that would be fine because this is just good. This is new for me, and I just appreciate the space that you guys have because you're able to do something that many adoptees may want to do, but I don't know how many will actually get to do based on their own, fears or insecurities, which are very normal. I have them, but you allowed me to do something today, so thank you.
Oh,
Thanks for being
thank you.
here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
See you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.